But Andrew Warren was elected by the people of Hillsborough County not once, but twice. So what do you say to people in the community who say that you're taking their vote away?
Well, the conduct that he has done has fell below the standard that's required of the Florida Constitution. When you're saying you're not going to enforce certain laws you don't like, that's a neglect of duty. That, quite frankly, is incompetence as defined in Florida law. And Florida courts have been very clear that saying you're just not going to enforce the law is by definition a dereliction of duty. And so what we're doing is just, as they said, I mean, in some respects, I'm here, I have to do this. I mean, that's my job to ensure that the laws are faithfully executed. And so we have that process in place for a reason, because I think the people that framed our most recent Constitution understood that you would need to have some accountability. And yes, I understand you have these processes, but quite frankly, you know, we can go back and look at some of these elections and all the money that's coming in from people that do not live in Florida and are really trying to push an agenda on the people of Florida. And I don't think the people of Hillsborough County want to have an agenda that is basically woke, where you're deciding that your view of social justice means certain laws shouldn't be enforced. I don't think there's very many people that believe that is consistent with the rule of law. Yes, sir.
Governor, yesterday we reported that there was an unattended ballot box in Broward County at the Broward SOE.
Well, before I do that, is there anyone else on this topic?
Governor, during your deliberations on this decision that you made, did at any time you have a discussion with Andrew Warren or ask him to explain himself?
No, because I was looking at the actual facts that were provided to me. We were able to, my office consulted with a lot of people. This was a statewide review to make sure that we were not going down the road of San Francisco, Los Angeles. And like 95% of it was all right here in Hillsborough. Everything anyone said was right here. I didn't hear the same in Duval or Miami-Dade or any of that. It was all right here. And then to see these blanket statements like saying that you're not going to enforce a prohibition on giving minor a sex change operation. You know, a 12-year-old boy can't go in and get a tattoo, but yet somehow if the legislature were to say that you can't get a sex change operation, and then we have laws that have been enacted. And so he was the only one that was making those types of declarations. He was the only one signing his name to letters that basically said, to hell with the people of Florida, I'm going to do what I want. You know, we take care that the laws are faithfully executed. Not every law on the books in Florida do I agree with. I mean, it is what it is. And yes, there's sometimes the legislature will put laws on my desk that I veto, and then it doesn't become law. They have the ability to override. They haven't done that yet. But that's just the way the system works. And for example, if it ever got to the point where I vetoed a piece of legislation and the legislature overrode it, I don't think that'll happen, but if it did, then I would be duty bound to enforce that law. I can't just say, you know what, and throw a hissy fit and say, oh, I don't think it's good and I'm not going to enforce. That's not the way the law works. And so and if you look around the country, the root of a lot of the problems is that this idea has taken hold that you can be a law unto yourself as a prosecutor, that it doesn't really matter what the legislature does. If you believe that that law conflicts with your idiosyncratic vision of, quote, social justice, then that gives you veto authority. And that is not how a constitutional system can operate. That is not how a rule of law can operate. And ultimately, you know, you cannot have safe and strong communities if we're not having enforcement of the law.
Andrew Warren for a while from law enforcement officials, but what was it that led you to ultimately make this decision? Was it his signing that letter regarding not prosecuting abortion cases last month?
Well, so as I said, as these problems around the country were coming to a head, I asked my office earlier this year to do a survey of what's going on in Florida to see, you know, because there's not every prosecutor is going to write on a sheet of paper, I'm not prosecuting, I'm going to ignore. I mean, that's a very egregious thing to do. But you will have sometimes policies which are de facto nullifications of the law. So they will say, well, you may be able to prosecute, but in circumstances that would never happen. So it required them to go and do a lot of different things. But yes, when you have the 2021 letter saying no matter what a state declares about protecting child welfare with respect, I mean, they use these euphemisms, but what it is they're literally chopping off the private parts of young kids. And that's wrong. And we're doing stuff administratively and with medical licenses, but the legislature in Florida may want to come in and do something more significant on that. Okay, what, you're going to presumptively say you can't do it? Some of the policies that have been in place. And then after Dobbs comes down, where the Supreme Court said this is returned to the states to say that the laws that we have, you're just not going to enforce any of them. And he drew no distinction. I mean, we've always had prohibition on third trimester abortion. We've always had prohibition, or at least for a while, on partial birth. And now the 3.5 months, it's, okay, that was a legislative debate. There were some people that had different views on it. The legislature passed it. I signed it. So that's what you have to do. So those are really, I think, egregious. And again, it's beyond just exercising discretion, whereas discretion would be I may get an individual case and make a determination that we're not going to go with prosecution because you have limited resources, what have you. Where it goes across the line is where that ends up being used to effectively nullify what the legislature has done. And clearly you've had that here in Hillsborough County. All right, Javier, is that the Broward? So I just saw that this morning. We have now an election integrity unit. We've got people that are investigating different things as these things come up. That's exactly why we did this, because we can pass all the great laws we wanted. In Florida, we're very proud that we've made ballot harvesting a felony in the state of Florida. We're very proud that we have voter ID, not just for going in to vote in person, but for requesting an absentee ballot. We're very proud that we were able to have penalties for counties if they don't clean their voting rolls every year. And we're very proud that we banned Zuckerbucks in the state of Florida. So those are all good. Those are all great, but then the issue is okay, you can have that, but if then people violate it and then there's no accountability, then where does that leave us? And so that's why we asked the legislature to enact an election integrity unit in state government where we have investigators, we have law enforcement, we have the ability to work with the Attorney General's office, with our statewide prosecutor, to be able to hold people accountable if they're not following the law. So we have very clear rules. First of all, you cannot put drop boxes in the middle of the community in Florida anymore. We got rid of that. If someone wants to return an absentee ballot, they can drop it off at an election site, but wherever they're putting in a ballot needs to be monitored by an election official the whole time. And there's video coming out saying this thing's just sitting there with no monitoring. That obviously isn't consistent with the law. So we have in place the ability to investigate this stuff. That is being done, and we're going to make sure that our elections are done consistent with the laws of the state of Florida. And you look around the country, they've been doing these elections in different parts this year, and you have an election, and then you have votes coming in for days and days, and people don't even know how many votes are out. It takes them forever to count. It's a very opaque process. We don't believe in that in Florida. We believe it's got to be transparent. We believe you count the votes and you declare a winner on election night. That's not that difficult to do. We're one of the biggest states, and we're able to do it. Why can't some of these other states do it? So So we're going to be, this is a very high priority to make sure that what we're doing, or what all the different 67 counties are doing, is following the law in the state of Florida. And honestly, it's not much different than the principle that brings us here today. I mean, yes, you can get elected to countywide office, but when you take office, you swear to uphold the laws and Constitution of the state of Florida. And so if you're not doing that, well, then that's something we need to have accountability and recourse for. So, okay, well, thanks, everybody. We appreciate